Welcome to the PlaceOS podcast. Today, my guest is Nitin Govila. We are talking about smart buildings, as we seem to always do on the PlaceOS podcast. But today, we're looking at a different angle of the building, and that's composite materials. And that might sound boring, but I actually think it's one of the most interesting areas. It's where you can take the material and improve the building's efficiencies by wrapping your building material, by shading areas, by managing heat and acoustics. We talk about all of the above. Here's my interview. So, hi, Nitin. So you're coming to us from Singapore.
Yeah.
I've been to Singapore many times. I wish I could be there right now, but with travel lockdowns, I haven't been anywhere for the last 2 years.
You can actually, the doors of Singapore are open for Australians, not vice versa.
It's coming back, which is the hard part. The 2-week hotel quarantine is the reason I wouldn't travel anywhere right now. So on our podcast, we talk a lot about smart buildings in general. And my bias is always to talk about the software that's operating the building. But I think a really clever thing to do when it comes to buildings, user experience, comfort, energy, is to select the right building materials in the first place. And so your experience is in an area where you could even improve on that, where maybe it's in the middle of the core building materials and the software making things more efficient. You could improve the building materials by composite materials, and make things more heat resistant, have shade so there's less energy consumption, or even improve visual design in some regard. So maybe we'll just touch on what you're doing there and how that relates to buildings in general.
So you're right, actually, in that sense. So Serge Ferrari is a French company leader in composite materials. And it's also a fact that we have a lot of materials both for interior and exterior applications. And more we see that Europe leading the way in the energy part, which they've always led the way in terms of building design and construction related to how manage the heat and solar part. Obviously, the Asian countries are a little bit lagging behind. There are many factors to that also. But in that sense, we see more and more products now being used and designed related to how do we manage the energy of a building. So most of our products, like we have materials for blinds, for awnings, for facades, which are used mainly for exteriors, but also we have acoustics materials which can be used interiors, and the blinds can be used in the interior part. They are now, people look at it when they are looking at the overall design of the building. They also, in the way the material is also made, we have this, the environment rating, or the green guard rating, as we say, which talks about the VOC compounds, the volatile compounds, which are emitted when it is exposed to sun or heat. So what kind of chemical gases kind of can be released. So those kind of ratings are becoming more and more important, and the product is evaluated based on that when it's being used not only for interior, for exterior. And for interior, the VOC, the green guard, becomes very important because we are going to be in that environment, in that office for long hours. And if the product is not stable or deteriorates over a period of time, then the risk to the inhabitants is a lot more. So that's on the chemical part of it, or the green, to maintain the right kind of environment and air. Now, having said that, we also see much more to how to use the energy of the sun in the right way, right? So now what is happening is more and more offices and buildings, they talk about how do you protect the home or the building from the heat itself outside. And this is where composite materials play a very important role, because the moment we say I block the heat, people think of a blackout or a dim out. Now, we don't want to do that, right? We want to be in an office building where we still feel we are connected to the environment outside. Now, that's where a composite material, which is a kind of a mesh, where you can have a very nice view through also. You're still connected to the environment, but how you block the heat, to what extent also, how you ensure that the glare is managed, where you're working inside office space on a laptop or on a computer screen and you feel comfortable. and at the same time have the right amount of view through, that you're not missing out of the nature or anything. Makes a very comfortable space for you to be there.
With those sort of materials for managing heat and the comfort and keeping sort of the connection to the environment around the building, I love that point. What stage of the project do you often get involved in? Is that something where they've already had the building up and running and they've realized they need to improve these areas, or is it part of the original design in the first place?
Well, actually, it's both. So
Yeah.
for us, our way of working for business is both new construction and renovation, as we classify the two markets you mentioned about. So renovation is much more where the local norms or the local government or the local, I mean, if I may say, prefecture in France, where they are putting new regulations that how energy should be managed in a building. So in
Yeah.
that sense, it will be a renovation project, and you can still do the window coverings, you can still do the envelope around the building. Now, in both the cases, you still need to work with the designers, the architects, and sometimes the facade consultants. But there are times now when the new construction is coming, because of exposure. Obviously, as a company, we lead the way when we look at specification, trying to work with architects, designers, when we work on different platforms or we are present in different platforms to show the new technologies. Then we are getting a chance to work with them from the starting phase itself, meaning where the building is facing, which side will be facing what, east, west, north, south, the exposure to the sun. And in the northern hemisphere, you really have to worry sometimes in the winters, the sun level is much lower. So it directly hits the eye level in that sense. So it is happening at both levels, absolutely at both
And I
levels.
imagine on the retrofit or the renovation level, sometimes these are simple changes that can have big impact, right? Like a lot of our customers are often trying to solve things with technology, with automation, with efficiencies, tying into subsystems, when they might just need to consider shading.
Exactly. So just to give you an example, we call this market a specific market called facades. And why we call it facades, and it's different from exteriors screens. Exterior screens are mainly will be related to the spaces where you have windows or open spaces. Facades are basically you can envelop the whole building. Now, the material is not heavy. The material maybe is around 600 grams a square meter, but it's very stable. We actually give a warranty of 10 years on that. What it does is, because it's flexible and composite material, if you're creative in design, you can actually work around the shape. It's a cylindrical shape, circular shape. You can do flat panels also. And because it's lightweight, to the fixing does not affect the overall core of the building. You're not putting the pressure that it's a heavy structure on in front of the building, that the building structure also needs to be strengthened. You can easily do that. And then you can play with the colors. This kind of material, you have many colors to play. You can play with the backlighting. You can also print on it. We have done some libraries in Europe where actually it's been enveloped. People feel that it's a design, but actually it's the fabric, and then the printing has been done on the fabric. So you can see some symbols.
I love that, because like it's like a ripple effect benefit. So the focus might be to improve some energy metric, but then it might improve comfort and therefore the user experience, and then it might improve the visual design of a building, or open up to new possibilities and get creative people involved, make it like a statement piece or an artwork, or
Absolutely, absolutely. In
work
fact,
with artists perhaps. Have you ever been on a project where that's happened?
yes, yes, yes. In fact, one of the key elements when we work on this, we define it not so we have various categories under which it's used. So one is absolutely the utility part. Very key element is how I can transform my ugly building to look like beautiful. We've done some stadiums in Central Asia like that. They did not have money to pull down the whole stadium,
Yeah.
but or a nice automobile showroom. They just did an envelope around it,
Yeah.
and it makes it absolutely amazing. You play with the light; nobody can feel that it was an old structure for 20 years.
This could be good for universities. I've done a lot of work with universities, and because there's such a sort of like a timeline of buildings across the campus, there's the modern buildings brand new buildings. There's always a new building project at most universities, but then there's like buildings from the 90s, buildings from the 80s, buildings from the 70s. And some of the really old ones are you can't touch, obviously, because they could be heritage listed. But the ones in between that many want to knock down and build something new because they're competing with a faculty that maybe has a nice new glass building. At least this is something, or something in between.
You could, the thing is, what you could do is not only, I mean, you can retain, so obviously the main structure will not change. For sure, when you're doing the envelope, it will not be visible. But at the same time, you can play with the design, you can play with the printing, and you can project on that product also, right? Yeah. So when you put it in, you can project it with different images. So as you say, you still retain the authenticity of the building, but at the same time, if you want to do something else, you don't have to put a big projector screen. You can easily project on that. And I may also want to add, we've seen some experience in some parts of the world where the ROI for the landlord has increased. I mean, he had an ugly building, people, a lot of energy consumption because directly exposed to the sun. And the moment they did this, not only the building kind of became beautiful, at the same time, the energy consumption dropped down. And for that landlord, it was an amazing improvement in the ROI without breaking down or totally starting a new construction of that facility.
Yeah. And it's simple things sometimes that a value add to a building. If the tenants, if it results in some sort of improvement to their experience, it can justify a higher rent from the landlord.
Exactly.
And if it's also saving money at the same time, I mean, like that's like a double-edged sword in a good way. You're saving money, improving the experience, then the total value is going up for sure. So one area I want to talk about is the bringing technology back to this, particularly the area we work with. We're sort of bleeding more and more into digital twins. And I imagine with all the materials that your company produces and provides, there's a way to simulate this data, right? So you could estimate the change it could have on the existing buildings. And obviously, in a sort of BIM model for brand new buildings, you could just simulate that as well.
Absolutely. So what we have done as a company, we developed our in-house tool, what we call Salticism. The name comes from Saltis, which is actually our brand of products for the screens. And and in that sense, we've added the element of the measurement of that. So we have the data for, I think, more than 85 cities across the world. You start with what type of glazing you have, single glazing, dual glazing, which city it is in, wind speed, the exposure to which side of the sun. When you put all the factors, and also you put the specific product, because we have different kinds of products with different openness, meaning 3% openness or a 14% openness in blinds, and easily you can simulate on the inside overall also for the building that how much energy consumption you have been able to reduce in percentage terms from today. So and you can put Brazil, you can put Paris, you can put Shanghai, and you'll have all the data. And this data is also updated in real time. So what we do is we keep on updating it as and when we get new information from these parts of the world, and we keep on adding cities. So it helps then when we talk to architects or designers, we are actually able to give real accurate data. And the more accurate data we also have from the building owners or the construction, then the more data we can give. Obviously, it's a tool which is providing information, but they still need to validate it through their own technical information. But it gives you a good perspective in that sense.
Yeah, and that's where our company's platform PlaceOS could have real-time data that we can reference for calculating before you put these materials in as well.
Yeah, and in fact, so this is one part of it. Now, when you come to screens, you can combine the screens, whether exterior or interior, with the home automation systems, right? You can combine with the home automation building motors company, right? Which and then the motors company, they have those systems where based on the wind or the sun or the exposure to the sun, they have a sensor. That sensor immediately transfers the data to the motor, and the motor then moves the blinds up and down depending on the level you want or whatever features you're looking at. If you want to block, say in a hurricane, right, you can block, the shutter comes out automatically. You don't have to buy wooden panels from a supermarket 24 hours before and then nail it on in front of it. I would like to share that this system in some cities and states like Florida, which is hurricane and everything, it became very popular because it was so easy. And same thing works with blinds. And now with blinds, you have the zip track system, what ensures that it's not flapping around with the bottom rail. You can actually go in rails. So even if there's a certain level of speed of wind and everything or sun, you can automatically bring it through an automated sensor system and the motors, which then ensures the efficiency. If you're away, say for a holiday, you don't have to worry. You can have still to tell people, oh, there is an occupant, so it protects you, the house also. But at the same time, if there's too much sun or rain or wind, the system automatically moves the blinds up and down. Obviously, the fabric has to be very stable because otherwise the system will not work.
It's interesting that like when building automation first came out, a lot of this was driven by schedules, but schedules can be wrong. So, or schedules change. We were just talking earlier about daylight savings tripping us up earlier when we were trying to meet with each other. I've seen that with building systems. They forget about daylight saving changes, and the schedules are triggering something too late or too early.
True.
But with real-time data, it's reactive dynamically to what's going on. I think the more people embrace real-time data, the more efficient their buildings can be, and combine this with the materials, then it's just these incremental things that at scale make big differences.
Yeah. So the scheduling part I was talking about was, I would say, a decade before. Now with the smartphones, I mean, you can do it from anywhere, right? I mean, you just have the phone on your, the data on your phone, it's connected to your system. You are in a different part of the world. You just feel that, okay, I need to change it. You just do it and the system will work. So in that sense, the connectivity part has become much more real time, that you can observe and do it. But at the same time, it's also feeding in data in that sense. Earlier, you used to put a fixed time. I remember those days when I was 15 years back working in France. You used to have a fixed time at 2 p.m. It will come to this level. Now, the climate change itself has changed the weather so much, it's very difficult to predict. But depending on the heat and sun, or the where the level of sun is or the wind is, the sensor captures it, and immediately you can move your blinds, you can open it, whatever you wish to do.
That's a good point. The climate change is like changing the schedules, so we can't depend on that anymore. Like, we have to have real-time input. Now, one of the areas you mentioned was so like similarly to you might not want to keep heat out, you want to use heat, you want to manage it. A similar area to that would be acoustics, right? So we're not, a lot of people have this idea of soundproofing a building when that's almost impossible to soundproof, because vibration always gets through. But you still want to be part of the environment, or you want to have sound to propagate through, but it's all about sound quality. I think it's a similar comparison. The heat and sound, you sort of just want to make sure it's deliberate and designed to be the way you want, and not just left without any consideration.
Well, I would love for all architects to think like you. It would make us business so easy, actually. The thing is, you're right when you said acoustics, people immediately assume soundproof, and actually it's not. Acoustics does not equal to soundproofing. Soundproofing is really a very specific need, maybe in a recording studio, maybe in a theater, or specific needs. But what you need most of the times, whether you're in a mall, home, restaurant, office, you don't want to block people from saying, or you cannot listen. What you want is to remove that disturbing noise, as I say. And I always differentiate between noise and sound. For me, sound is a positive word. Noise is all the, for example, when you scratch on a glass, right? You don't like that noise. It irritates your ear. So for me, that's what noise is. And if people can start thinking interior spaces, it's not always of the wall panel. With the composite material, I can even cover my lamp with a soundproof, a good acoustics fabric. I can do my the lighting. Today I put glass. I can cover the whole section of lights with the fabric. So it kind of harmonizes the space, and at the same time, it does not hit your eye. What you don't want is you feel a sound absorber is just facing me, or I've created a panel which is kind of disturbing the look of the room or the space. You just want everything to be integrated. The composite materials which are used in acoustics, you can print it. I see a painting behind you in your background. Now easily you could print it on a acoustic a composite material, and nobody would know, but it will serve the purpose to make the space nice and comfortable for people who are there and talking to each other.
I think when it comes to a vertical that strongly needs this today, it's workplace. And it's strange, really, that a lot of workplaces don't prioritize acoustics because the whole purpose of a workplace is collaboration and communication. More so today than ever before, because as we return to work, we're repurposing what we thought of the workplace. It's mostly going to be somewhere you go to collaborate, probably work from home, go to the office to meet with others. So I think I'm starting to see in our own projects that people are at least talking about it a little bit more, like how do we improve the acoustics, at least in the meeting rooms. But more importantly I think is where you're working, so you're not distracted. There's technologies out there, sound masking technologies that organizations are using, but it's all very complicated. And the hardest thing for this is the outcome is comfort, which is harder to justify than energy consumption outcomes, right? So if an organization is trying to save money, they can easily say, well, if we reduce the energy, it equals X dollars of savings. Exactly. But comfort is the most important thing to attract people back to the workplace right now. If you can make your workplace more comfortable and you want your workers to come back to work once COVID settles down and people return to work in more numbers, I think this is an easy win for people because it probably wasn't considered earlier on.
And absolutely, because, more and more when I read people say the new workplaces will be open spaces. And we already start seeing in companies, the key management also will not have a room because either they were traveling or when they are in office, they can just sit somewhere, right? Yeah. When you have this kind of thing, and you rightly said, heat and energy is measurable because it's real dollar terms or whatever currency, But when it comes to acoustics, it's comfort, it's wellness. But at the same time, you don't want to go to the old times that each manager had a cabin, right? It disturbs your new philosophy of working. So how can you make a space where people can still take calls, talk to people, but at the same time, if there's a small cubicle, open cubicle of a round table where two people can sit or three can sit or talk, it's a comfortable sound and a space. You don't feel stressed out after the whole day that I was in this open space. Really, and COVID has given a choice to people, but in the end, companies, if they have to survive and succeed, that human interaction is absolutely necessary. I mean, if you don't have beyond a certain point of time, you cannot have those casual chats, the coffee chats, standing in front of smoking cannot be allowed in the interiors anyway, but those kinds of chats are missing, which keep the culture of a company going, frankly.
It's interesting, acoustics. I just thought of another way it's popping up in my projects. Our customers are rolling out sensors, just general sensors that do proximity counting of people, but also happen to have a sound level meter built in, so it can work out the sound level. But what are they going to do with that data? Like they might be able to show you that, this space is louder than this other space. So for choice, you can say, well, I'm going to work in the quiet space. But this is data they could have historically, and then maybe look at the simulated data of what can I add to this space to improve it. And that's where we can come back to that digital twins concept. If we can identify problems with real-time data, we can look at what outcomes we want, and then we can look at the material data to work out, well, what happens if I make some changes.
Absolutely, and this is where, with acoustics, this is the tricky part. A lot of tools are available. I mean, when we do projects, and most of the times people use us and stadiums or big closed sports areas or amphitheaters kind of things, and they use it because they are able to measure the reverberation level. The real level of acoustics measurement, when we say the NRC value or the alpha value, what it means is that the reverberation sound, the drop by 60 MB from the 60 dB, for example, from the time you hit the sound source and where it dropped by 60 decibel, that is the number, that is the time you measure. Now they measure that, and that's why they use it, and it's proven there. So as you say, if it can be done in those places and it's part of the design, why can it not be done in the spaces of workspace, where then at least you can show. Now it's true that it's a qualitative thing in terms of people feeling comfortable and working. So there may be some metrics which people can creatively think of to look at it, and the HR or the people management consultants can really guide on that. But you're right, I think if we don't use those tools or data which is being used somewhere but maybe not used in other kind of places, then we are really missing an opportunity.
I think that data is related to the emotion you feel at work. Like ultimately, the workplace wants more productive employees, but they also want to retain their employees. So I think to measure both of those things, you can assume a happy employee is a productive employee, and there are tools being introduced. It falls into this area of privacy concerns, because we could actually have cameras in a workplace that monitors people's emotions based on their facial recognition. We could roll that out tomorrow, but I think we're still working out the privacy impact of that. And looking at, well, what's maybe something a bit more manual, surveying the employees at the right time, not overloading them with a huge multi-page survey, but like once they've just come out of a meeting room, ask them, how was that meeting? Select a smiley face level, and think of the other sort of context where we can sort of take a snapshot of how people feel about space. I think there'll be a lot of things like acoustics are not visible to the average employee, but I would imagine that the data would tell us people feel happier when the sound is better, because it's such an impact. I mean, you can't escape bad sound. You can't close your ears to anything. You physically have to leave the environment if it's too bad. And that will mean people just work from home. And some workplaces don't want that as much as is happening right now.
True. And this is where, the points sometimes becomes important is to look at the holistic design on the interiors. Yeah. And acoustics is absolutely important, but it's also the amount of heat, glare, and light which is coming, because the spirit is also dependent that I feel comfortable. Not everyone will face in one direction. Yeah, right. We are not creating the old times of old factories where it was everybody sitting in the same direction and doing those things, right? You have cross tables, people in 4 directions, right? But one's comfort cannot be a discomfort for somebody else, right? So
yeah, exactly.
So it's a way.
So Nitin, one of our strongest verticals is workplace, and I've been using a few workplace examples here. And I know you have a personal interest in meditation.
Yeah.
Does your personal interest intersect with your work when it comes to creating a comfortable space? Do you see that as a need for commercial workplaces, having meditation space, or is this just a trend no one really knows what to do with?
No, actually, it's interesting. So there are 2 parts to it. One is that on the wellness and well-being part, a lot of companies over the years, when I say, I would say last 3-4 years, started taking initiatives to bring different options to the employees on a regular basis. So it started with sometimes wellness talks. It went towards talks about financial planning, just about guiding people. And then obviously it went more towards, over a period of time, towards meditation. Now, COVID has magnified that, because earlier it used to be physical. So people had those challenges of where to get a speaker from and other trainers from. Now, COVID in a way made it easy. So more and more people feel that if they can provide this for people to take a time off for themselves, or a space for themselves where they can, just connect with their own self. Now, the next step which I'm seeing now, for sure, in some companies, they've gone to the next level to create a space. I know one company, totally awesome, with whom, as a personal trainer, as a personal, as a volunteer, I've been doing meditation sessions for them on a regular basis. They actually just moved into a new office, and they've actually created, as they call it, as a spiritual or a self space room where
Yeah.
whoever believes in whatever or wishes to just take out time for themselves goes there, sits there. I have not visited. They were asking me to come, so we still have some COVID restrictions in Singapore related to
Yeah.
visits and everything. But this is, I would say, the next step. Now, how many will
It's interesting, though. I see that some organizations might put it in without thinking about it. I've seen some of our clients put in, convert a meeting room into a meditation, a bookable meditation space. But because we're providing the space analytics, we know that space isn't used very often, and it would be more valuable to them as a meeting room, which they're running out of meeting space. I think probably the obvious problem there is no one has come in and trained anyone on how to meditate at work, or maybe because no one knows how to do it, there could even be stigma to doing it in front of your colleagues or something like that.
It's true. And here in this case, with this company, the good part is that the CEO and the HR head both have been taking one-to-one sessions with me for now a couple of years now. So they see the value. So when they move to this new office, they didn't combine it with meeting space. It's a specific space created for that. When you go there, you can be in silence. Maybe they'll put some books for general reading, whether you practice this or that. You just go in that space, and you can be with yourself. You can just do a quiet reading. You can sit on the floor, on the sofa, or on the chair, whichever you feel comfortable with. Take out time to meditate yourself. And but I do feel that you're right, that it starts from people understanding what real meditation is. And when people understand, and it could be anything, okay, I follow a certain practice, somebody else will follow a certain different practice. But the fact that to understand that employees need to reconnect or take out time to connect to their self, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, it could be 30 minutes, does not matter. Then you will see when they come back again after taking that break, come back to the work, or when they do it in the morning and start their work, it's a total different way of interaction, working, and everything. And then when they realize that, then it's easy for them to say, I think it's important to do that. We were just thinking, I got, I think few months back, we saw in a mall in Singapore, it was I think a phone company or something. They created small phone booths, if I may say so. Okay. Yeah. Now, it could be like that. I know Amazon or Walmart tried it, but kind of it backfired because
yes.
I think you're right. Maybe they did not. It was a great idea, if you ask me. It was just that maybe the right space or the right way to communicate could have been kind of missing out.
I think in their case, they had some fundamental HR issues they should have resolved before thinking about, if you have the pyramids of needs sort of analogy, that they will still had some big problems before they can add icing on the cake, things like workplace wellness for their employees.
True.
But yeah, I think it's something people are going to, particularly talking about COVID and returning to work. I imagine a lot of people have discovered meditation at home, through the mainstream of apps like Calm and Headspace. At least for mindfulness meditation, maybe it's a new trick up everyone's sleeve, and they're going to go into work wanting space to do their 10 minutes a day.
Yeah, true. In fact, the practice I follow, which is Heartfulness Meditation, we also have now an app which is Heart in Tune, where we say it, make meditation a habit. So it's like, it's like the Fitbit, right? You can even see the data. I mean, you're talking about the data part, right? Okay, how regular I am. Today, I sat for 10 minutes. Now, am I able to increase it by 2 more minutes the next week, right? Because when you say today, and I face this challenge, I started 23 years back. I still meditate for minimum 30, 45 minutes, 1 hour. I never face a problem. I don't think that I'm giving time. In fact, it's the exact opposite. When people ask me, oh, how do you give so much time? I say the fact that I give time, I always feel I have more time at hand versus not giving time for that. But when people say that, then I say, okay, start 10 minutes. Maybe a week after, increase by 2 more minutes. You would not even realize. And maybe in 3 to 6 months time, you might just be meditating 30 minutes, but you would not have realized that you are giving 30 minutes of your time. So it's just about that. And this app which we call Heart in Tune is actually a nice way for them to just download. There are small micro practices also. Feeling stressed, feeling anxiety, or you just want to calm yourself, do this 2 minutes, 3 minutes micro practice, and feel the benefit for yourself. So there are.
But this is where like the app can basically take over a space.
Yes.
We could bring in automation. Yes. To trigger the space into meditation mode.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that maybe solves the problem if there's some sort of guidance. So it's not just a meditation space without any guidance for that. It's walk in and, if you don't know how to meditate, we can take you through steps. Or, as you said, help build the habit. Maybe it could be a workplace incentive that we allocate automatically 10 minutes a day to everyone to get started. And I get points for doing it or something like that.
True.
Well, I think it's been an interesting conversation. A good way to end it is the sort of progression from energy consumption and choosing composite materials to improve the energy of your building, but then also the ripple effect of comfort. And comfort also leads to workplace wellness, which we can think about meditation, which I think is a great thing for organizations to think about. I myself, I fall off the wagon quite a lot. I meditate as much as I can, but I do it in stints where I'll go 2 weeks doing it every day. Then something will happen. I'll go away for a few days, and then I'll forget to get back onto it again. So it is work. That's the hardest thing I find with it.
But Jonathan, I've realized from experience, sometimes even if the break happens because of things not being under our control, actually those are the times when we realize the value of meditation.
Yes, exactly.
Because when we do
when you're not doing it.
When we do it, we sometimes get into the habit. It becomes part of our system. When we don't do it, then we realize, what we are missing. So in that sense, it is true. But great chatting with you, Jonathan, and thanks a lot for inviting me. And it was great interacting. And I hope we should be able to see each other sometime early next year when I travel to Australia. And if you wish to know more on meditation, I'm more than happy to have a separate call or a discussion any time you wish to.
Great. Thanks, Nitin.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.